Mom, we need to leave now. The urgency in Sage's whisper cuts through the ambient chatter of the Harwood Hotel ballroom. I look down to find my 15-year-old daughter's face pale beneath the crystal chandeliers, her fingers gripping her iPhone so tightly her knuckles have gone white. What's wrong? I ask, setting my champagne flute on a passing server's tray. Sage glances over her shoulder, then holds her phone up. I found these in Dad's briefcase when he asked me to grab his glasses. Look. The screen shows photographs of legal documents, and as I swipe through them, my hands begin to tremble. Blood rushes in my ears, drowning out the orchestra and the polite laughter of 180 guests in their evening finest. Are these? My voice falters as the words on the page come into focus. Trust amendments, property transfers, custody petitions. They're planning to give the Lake Lodge to Dad and Tessa, Sage whispers. And they want to make Rowan live with them full-time. I steady myself against the marble column, the room suddenly spinning as I process what this means. The family Lake Lodge childhood sanctuary, worth nearly $1.5 million being handed to Derek and his new wife. And my 9-year-old son effectively taken from me. The documents bear my father's letterhead. Marshall Harwood, orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. My own parents, conspiring with my ex-husband to erase me from the family legacy. The annual Harwood Hotel's gala continues around us, oblivious to my world collapsing. Across the room, I spot my father deep in conversation with Derek and Tessa. My mother stands beside them, her hand resting on Derek's arm as she laughs at something he says. Where's Rowan? I ask, scanning the crowd. Grandpa took him to show off to the board members. Sage's voice cracks. He told Rowan that someday he'd run everything. 10 years of marriage had ended when I discovered Derek's affair with Tessa Blackwell, whose family owned the private equity firm that had been eyeing Harwood Hotels for years. The betrayal had been devastating enough, but my parents' reaction had been worse, subtle blame, as if I had somehow driven Derek to cheat. I'd moved the children to a modest duplex in Ann Arbor, cobbling together income from freelance textile projects and a part-time position at the History Museum. Meanwhile, my parents showered Rowan with extravagant gifts: a junior golf membership, a custom laptop, even a small trust fund, while barely acknowledging Sage's dance competitions or academic achievements. I'd told myself they just connected better with Rowan, that it wasn't deliberate favoritism. But these documents tell a different story. This isn't thoughtlessness, it's calculated exclusion. Find your brother, I tell Sage, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Tell him we're leaving. Meet me by the coat check in 5 minutes. I cross the ballroom floor, weaving between guests until I spot Rowan standing beside my father, wearing a miniature version of Derek's tuxedo. My heart constricts at how much he resembles his father. Rowan, honey, Sage isn't feeling well. We need to head home. My father's smile falters. But Laurel, we haven't announced the succession plans yet. Everyone's expecting. We know exactly what you're planning, Dad. The words come out stronger than I expected, years of swallowed hurt finally finding voice. His eyes narrow, darting toward where Derek stands with my mother and Tessa. Within seconds, they've moved to stand beside him, a united front against me. The choreography of their movement confirms everything they've been planning this for months, perhaps years. Laurel, be reasonable, my mother says, her smile fixed. We're thinking of what's best for the family. Which family members exactly? I ask, taking Rowan's hand. Derek steps forward. This isn't the place for a scene. For once we agree. I turn toward the exit where Sage waits, her shoulders squared despite the fear in her eyes. As I guide my children through the crowd, I feel something inside me shift. The part of me that always sought my parents' approval, that avoided conflict at all costs, begins to crumble away. In its place rises something fiercer, something protective and uncompromising. They've made their choice. Now I'll make mine. Later that night, the duplex feels hollow as we return from the gala, our footsteps echoing against the hardwood floors that need refinishing. Rowan heads straight to bed, exhausted by the night's tension, while Sage paces the kitchen, still clutching her phone. There's more, she whispers, her fingers trembling as she unlocks her screen. I took pictures of everything I found. The kitchen counter presses cold against my palms as I steady myself, scanning through each document Sage captured. My breath catches when I reach a page with my father's elegant signature at the bottom. Trust revisions, not just for the Lake Lodge, but for everything. They're cutting me out completely, Sage says, her voice breaking. Grandpa's revised the family trust. Rowan gets everything when he turns 25. I get nothing. I grip the counter edge so hard my fingers ache. The implications crash over me like waves. This isn't just about property or custody. It's erasure. My daughter, written out of her own family's legacy as if she never existed. Why would they do this? Sage asks, wiping angrily at her eyes. Before I can answer, a gentle knock at our front door makes us both jump. My Aunt Corinne stands on the porch, her silver hair gleaming under the porch light. The worry in her eyes tells me she already knows. I left right after you did, she explains, settling onto our worn sofa. Unlike my mother's stiff posture when she visits, Corinne leans in, her hand finding mine. I've seen this before, Laurel. Your father did the same thing to my sister Phoebe 20 years ago. Phoebe? We never talk about her. The name feels foreign on my tongue, a family ghost. Corinne nods grimly. That's by design. Marshall has always been obsessed with controlling the family legacy. Anyone who challenges him gets erased. But why target Sage? I ask, my voice barely audible. Because she's like you, independent, questioning, Corinne says. And because Derek made a deal, he gets the lodge and increased custody of Rowan in exchange for helping Marshall streamline the family inheritance. Sage's face pales. Dad agreed to cut me out? Your grandfather has done this twice before, Corinne continues. First with Phoebe when she married someone he disapproved of, then with your cousin James when he chose art school instead of business. She leans closer. Marshall calls it legacy cleansing, removing complications from the family line. The words land like blows. Complications. As if my daughter is nothing more than an inconvenient footnote. They'll try for full custody of Rowan next, Corinne warns. Derek's already filed paperwork claiming your financial instability makes you an unfit parent. My fingers curl into fists. They can't prove that. They've already enrolled Rowan in Lakeside Academy for fall semester, Corinne says. It's 5 minutes from Derek's new house with Tessa. The room spins slightly. Lakeside Academy, exclusive private school where generations of Harwoods have attended, where my father sits on the board of trustees. They've been planning this for months, I whisper, memories reshuffling like cards. The sudden invitations for Rowan to spend weekends with his grandparents. Derek's unexpected flexibility with custody schedules when it involved my parents. Years, possibly, Corinne says softly. Tessa's family has wanted a partnership with Harwood Hotels since before you and Derek even met. The implication hangs in the air between us. Had my entire marriage been strategic? A business arrangement disguised as love? After Corinne leaves, I sit alone in the dark, Sage finally asleep upstairs. My laptop glows as I log into an old cloud account. Derek and I once shared one he probably forgot existed. My fingers move mechanically, searching through folders until I find what I'm looking for. Email archives. One from my father to Derek dated 3 years ago. Remember our arrangement. Patience will be rewarded. Another from Derek to Tessa, shortly before our divorce. Everything's proceeding according to plan. Marshall promises the lodge and increased custody once things are finalized. My hands no longer tremble as I download and save each damning piece of evidence. A strange calm settles over me, the kind that comes when fear burns so hot it crystallizes into something harder. As I read through Derek's emails that night, I faced a critical choice. Confront my parents immediately with what I'd found, or quietly build a case with legal help first. Direct confrontation might satisfy my anger, but patience might protect my children better. What would you do when those who should protect you become the greatest threat? 2 days later, the letter from Derek's attorney arrives on crisp legal stationery, the morning sun casting shadows across words that steal my breath. Emergency custody motion. Allegations of parental unavailability. Court date next month. My hands tremble as I read further temporary supervised visitation until proceedings conclude. I call my supervisor at the museum immediately. Christine, I need to take a personal day. Everything okay? Concern colors her voice. Legal issues. My voice sounds hollow, distant. My ex-husband filed for emergency custody of Rowan. The document outlines Derek's claims in meticulous detail, my erratic work schedule, financial instability, and emotional unpredictability following the divorce. What turns my blood cold is the addendum parents have submitted sworn affidavits supporting his petition. My mother's statement describes finding Rowan unwashed and wearing the same clothes 2 days in a row during a weekend visit. My father questions my emotional stability to parent effectively, citing an incident where I broke down crying at a family dinner, 3 months after discovering Derek's affair. That evening, the phone rings. My father's number. "Laurel, we're only trying to help," he says without preamble. "Derek has a point about your work schedule, between the museum and your little craft projects. Textile restoration. I correct automatically, and I'm home every day when the kids return from school. Rowan needs a stable male influence. You know how boys are at this age." I hang up without responding. The next morning, Rowan's principal calls during my shift. I step into the break room to take it. "Mrs. McKinney, we're concerned about Rowan's recent behavior," she begins. "He pushed another student during recess and told the counselor that real families stay together and that a man's responsibility is to protect the family name." I close my eyes, recognizing my father's exact phrasing. "Has anything changed at home recently?" she asks. "Everything," I want to say. Instead, I schedule a meeting for tomorrow. That night, I find Rowan's homework incomplete, his responses to his teacher's questions single word and sullen. When I ask about school, he stares at his plate. "Grandpa says I shouldn't have to do busy work. He says I'll be running hotels someday." Sleep eludes me. Each night, I lie awake cataloging every potential mistake, every moment that could be twisted in court. I start leaving the museum during lunch breaks to check on the children at school. My hands shake as I measure fabric for a restoration project, ruining an entire bolt of vintage silk. My supervisor notices, suggests I take some time off. "You look exhausted, Laurel." I can't afford time off. I can't afford anything that might support Derek's claims. 3 mornings after receiving notice of our court date, I purchase a digital recorder. When Derek calls to discuss weekend plans, I press record before answering. "We're not doing this anymore," I tell him, placing the device visibly on the kitchen counter. "Every conversation between us will be documented from now on." His laugh sounds forced. "Paranoid much?" "Prepared." I correct him. "For supervised visitation this weekend, I'll meet you at the community center at 10. The recorder becomes my constant companion. I document every exchange with my parents, every school pickup, every meal preparation. I take photos of completed homework, clean bedrooms, stocked refrigerators. I start a spreadsheet tracking Rowan's behavioral incidents, noting the correlation with visits to his grandparents. One evening, Sage sits cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by old photo albums I'd rescued during the divorce. "Mom, look at this." She holds up a yellowed photograph. A young woman with my eyes and my mother's chin stands beside a Christmas tree, arms slung around a teenage version of my father. "Is this Aunt Phoebe?" I take the photo, studying the woman I haven't seen since I was 12. Yes, Dad's younger sister. There's an address and phone number on the back. I turn it over, recognizing my grandmother's handwriting. An address in Seattle, a phone number I've never called. Sage looks up from her phone, eyes bright. "She replied in 10 minutes, Mom," she says, showing me her screen. "She says she's been waiting for our call for years." On Saturday afternoon, the cafe I choose for meeting Derek sits equidistant between our homes, busy enough for witnesses but quiet enough for conversation. I arrive early, selecting a table near the window. The recorder sits beside my coffee cup. Derek arrives 12 minutes late, designer briefcase in hand. His eyes flick to the recorder, then back to me. "Custody modification is standard in these situations," he begins, voice professionally neutral. "With Tessa and me providing a 2-parent household." "Why are you doing this?" I interrupt. "You never wanted primary custody before." His jaw tightens. "Rowan needs stability." "He had stability until you started telling him I wasn't good enough." "That's not. You know exactly what you and my parents are doing." I lean forward. "The question is why you're helping them." Something shifts in his expression, a flicker of something that looks almost like shame. "You'll never win against them," he hisses, voice dropping. "I spent 10 years trying to be good enough." The realization washes over me like cold water. Derek wasn't just my husband. He was their project, their attempt to secure the right kind of son-in-law. His betrayal with Tessa wasn't just about infidelity, it was about failing their expectations, then desperately trying to regain favor. "I don't need to win against them," I say, my voice steadier than I expected. "I just need to protect my children from all of you." For the first time since our divorce, I feel something other than anger toward Derek, a complicated pity for the man still seeking my father's approval. 3 days later, the doorbell rings at 7 a.m. I open it to find a woman with silver-streaked dark hair and my father's sharp cheekbones. "Phoebe?" I breathe. I caught the first flight from Seattle. She envelops me in a hug that smells of unfamiliar perfume and familiar family. I brought everything from when they did this to me. At the kitchen table, she spreads documents chronicling her own disinheritance 20 years earlier. The same patterns, different decade. Unlike my parents who interrupt constantly, Phoebe listens completely, nodding as I detail the custody petition and property transfers. "Marshall hasn't changed his playbook in decades," she says, sorting papers into neat piles. Luckily, neither have I. With each passing day, I stand straighter, speak more confidently, think more clearly. When a colleague compliments my restored posture, I realize how long I've been physically diminished by doubt. After extensive research, I hire Monica Trujillo, an attorney with a reputation for battling wealthy families in custody disputes. She studies the recorded conversations with narrowed eyes. "They've made critical mistakes," she says, tapping one transcript. "And I heard from a colleague that Tessa's father is threatening to withdraw investment unless Derek exits the litigation." That evening, my phone buzzes with a text from my father. "Family meeting tomorrow, final chance to be reasonable." I look at Sage completing homework at the dining table, at Phoebe creating a timeline of evidence on my living room wall, at Monica's business card propped against a fresh pot of coffee. For the first time in years, I feel something like power. Next week, the leather chair creaks as I shift my weight, watching Monica Trujillo spread documents across the polished conference table. Our binder of evidence sits open between us, each tab color-coded and labeled in Sage's neat handwriting. Across the table, my father's attorney, a silver-haired man in a tailored suit, has stopped taking notes. His eyes dart between the documents and my father's increasingly rigid posture. "As you can see," Monica says, tapping a printed email chain, "we have documented evidence of Mr. Harwood and Mr. McKinney coordinating the transfer of assets specifically to exclude Ms. McKinney and her daughter from the family inheritance." She slides forward a timeline meticulously constructed over 3 sleepless nights. This pattern began approximately 16 months ago, shortly after Mr. McKinney's engagement to Miss Blackwell. My father's jaw tightens. The conference room feels suddenly airless despite its size. Sage sits beside me, back straight, eyes fixed on her grandfather with an unflinching gaze that makes my chest swell with pride. "These accusations are absurd," Derek interjects, tugging at his collar. "Laurel has always had an artistic temperament. Since the divorce, she's become increasingly paranoid about." "About what, Mr. McKinney?" Monica interrupts, her voice cool. "About your meetings with her father to discuss how custody of Rowan might be leveraged? Or about the fact that your new father-in-law has threatened to contest your prenuptial agreement unless this litigation is resolved quickly?" The color drains from Derek's face. My father turns toward him, eyes narrowing to slits. "What is she talking about?" My father's voice drops dangerously low. Monica slides another document across the table. "Mr. Blackwell's legal team contacted us yesterday. It seems he's concerned about potential negative publicity affecting their upcoming merger." My father snatches the paper, scanning it quickly. The vein at his temple pulses as he glares at Derek. For the first time, I see uncertainty ripple across my father's face, the dawning realization that his carefully constructed plan has a significant weakness: Derek himself. "We'll need a brief recess," my father's attorney announces, gathering his notes with trembling fingers. When they return 20 minutes later, my father looks 10 years older. He clears his throat and slides a document toward me. "We're prepared to maintain your current allowance if you'll accept the new arrangement quietly. It's a generous offer, considering the circumstances." I stare at the paper, noting the amount enough to ease the constant financial pressure, to ensure Sage could attend any college she chooses, to replace my aging car. The temptation knots in my stomach, warring with everything that brought me here today. Should I take the financial security and avoid a prolonged fight? Or stand firm knowing my children are watching how I respond to injustice? My thoughts are interrupted as the conference room door opens. Aunt Phoebe walks in, looking remarkably like my mother 30 years ago. Her presence sends a visible shockwave through my parents. "I believe I'm expected," she says, pulling out a chair beside me. My mother's face crumples. "Phoebe, you don't understand." "Actually, I understand perfectly." Phoebe opens her laptop. "In 2003, you and Marshall orchestrated nearly identical legal maneuvers to remove me from the family trust. You claimed my lifestyle choices made me unfit to participate in the family legacy. She turns her screen toward the attorneys. I've documented every incident spanning 3 decades, including the disinheritance of Cousin Martin in 1996 for marrying someone you disapproved of. Monica stands, adding, "This establishes a clear pattern of manipulative control through financial means. Given these findings, we're prepared to pursue a fiduciary breach lawsuit unless a fair settlement is reached today." My father's attorney leans over, whispering urgently in his ear. The confident patriarch who ruled our family with absolute authority for 40 years suddenly looks cornered. "We only wanted what was best for the family name," my mother says, tears spilling down her cheeks. She reaches for a tissue, her perfectly manicured hands trembling. The hotels, the legacy, it all needs to be protected. "From what, Mom?" I ask quietly. "From me? From Sage?" "From mistakes," my father answers, but his voice lacks its usual conviction. His shoulders slump forward as Monica mentions potential tax implications of the trust manipulations. After a hurried conference, my father's attorney suggests moving to the mediation room to discuss settlement terms. As we gather our materials, I catch Derek checking his phone anxiously, no doubt receiving pressure from his new father-in-law. The walls are closing in on them, just as they once did on me. The difference is, I've learned to stand firm when what matters most is at stake. For the first time since this battle began, I allow myself to believe we might actually win. Marshall Harwood leans forward in his Italian leather chair, manicured fingers splayed across the polished conference table. My father's trademark confidence wavers as he slides a folder toward me. "A reasonable compromise," he says, his voice steady but his hand trembling slightly. "Sage receives a modest trust. You and Derek share the lodge, with his family having primary usage rights. This preserves everyone's dignity." Beside him, my mother dabs at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, her gaze darting between me and the family portraits lining the mahogany-paneled walls of the Harwood legal offices. "Laurel, please," she whispers. "Your artistic talents are wonderful, but business matters require different capabilities." Derek checks his phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes, his jaw clenched tight. The alliance is fracturing before my eyes. Monica Trujillo, my attorney, remains silent beside me. We anticipated this, their last desperate gambit before total surrender. "And Rowan?" I ask, though I already know. "He'll benefit most from Derek's guidance," my father replies. "The boy needs stability, structure, male influence." I absorb the familiar sting of these words. For years, they've been the background music of my life, the subtle message that I was somehow less than, incomplete, inadequate. But today, that music stops. I open my own leather portfolio, removing a document bearing the Harwood Trust Company letterhead. Monica had found it through Discovery, the smoking gun we needed. "This is an independent evaluation of my financial management since the divorce," I say, sliding it across the table. "Conducted by your own bank, Dad." My father's eyes narrow as he scans the document. "I've outperformed your selected financial advisors by 11%. I continue, my voice gaining strength with each word. "I've maintained perfect credit while establishing my business and providing for my children's needs on a fraction of what you consider necessary income." I place a second document beside ITT profit and loss statement from my textile business, now supplying custom work to 3 museums and a small but growing online clientele. "I'm not accepting crumbs from my own family table," I say, meeting my father's gaze directly. "My children deserve their birthright, both of them, equally." The conference room falls silent except for my mother's uneven breathing. On the walls around us, generations of Harwoods stare down from their portrait-stern patriarchs and proper matriarchs who built the hotel empire from a single roadside inn in 1937. I reach into my bag and remove 3 framed photographs, placing them carefully on the table. Sage's latest dance competition portrait. Rowan's school picture, his smile missing 2 teeth. And between them, a faded photograph of a young woman with my mother's eyes and a hesitant smile. "Aunt Phoebe," I say simply. My mother gasps, her hand reaching toward the photo before my father catches her wrist, pulling it back. But I've seen what I needed to see, the reflexive love, still there after all these years of enforced silence. "For 40 years, you've decided who belongs in this family," I say, my voice quiet but firm. "You erased Phoebe when she married someone you disapproved of. You've been systematically erasing Sage because she reminds you too much of her. And you've been grooming Rowan to become the son you never had. My father's face hardens. This melodrama is... Today, that power ends. I interrupt, something I've never dared to do before. These are my terms. Equal trusts for both my children. Full title to the lodge. Public acknowledgement of your manipulation. And supervised visitation with my children, yes. Supervised until you demonstrate you can respect their mother and treat both children equally. Derek stands abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're not agreeing to... Tessa's father called me yesterday. Monica interjects smoothly. He mentioned he's prepared to withdraw all financial support if this litigation continues. Something about protecting family reputation? Derek's face drains of color as he sinks back into his chair. My father's eyes dart between us, calculating rapidly as the foundation of his plan crumbles. For the first time in my life, I see something unfamiliar in his expression: defeat. 30 minutes later, I watch as he signs the agreement, his fountain pen scratching across the paper with angry precision. Derek leaves without speaking, his shoulders rigid. Later, his attorney will contact Monica to accept 12 months of supervised visitation, citing travel commitments as the reason. As I gather my belongings, my thoughts turn to Rowan. How will I help him understand what's happened without damaging his relationship with his father? The question weighs heavily as I sign the final documents. When I step into the lobby, I find my mother waiting alone, clutching Phoebe's photograph to her chest like a precious artifact. Is she happy? She asks, her voice small and uncertain. The question catches me off guard, not accusation or defense, but genuine concern. For the first time, I see my mother as she truly is, a woman who allowed fear and control to cost her a daughter. I hesitate, balancing truth against mercy, wondering if some wounds can begin healing even after decades of neglect. A year later, the sunlight streams through leaded glass windows, casting honeycomb patterns across my new living room floor. The Craftsman bungalow sits just 6 blocks from the museum, with enough space for each of us to breathe. I run my fingers along the oak banister, still marveling that this place is truly mine. Where does this box go? Sage calls from the entryway, hefting a carton labeled Family Photos. Living room bookcase, I answer, watching as she navigates around Rowan's scattered Legos. We'll sort through them tonight. The lodge sold for nearly $2 million more than Marshall's valuation. The irony doesn't escape me. Derek's manipulation backfired spectacularly when Tessa's father learned the full story and made a generous offer through a subsidiary company. The proceeds funded this home, college accounts for both children, and seed money for Harwood Heritage Textiles, my now thriving business creating custom fabric installations for boutique hotels. I no longer check my phone for messages from my parents before making decisions. Our family photos now include Aunt Phoebe, her wife Clara, and their twin boys. Instead of seeking approval, I sign contracts and negotiate terms with my own signature. The trembling in my hands has finally stopped. 1 year after the mediation, I host Sunday dinner. Not in some sterile hotel banquet room, but here in our home, filled with the scent of rosemary chicken and fresh-baked bread. The museum display lacks proper historical context. My father announces, scrutinizing the invitation to my textile exhibition propped on the mantel. I should speak with the curator about their obvious oversights. My mother nods. We could provide more appropriate sponsorship if they'd just... Dad? I interrupt, my voice quiet but firm. The exhibition celebrates women textile artists who built businesses during economic downturns. The curator and I have worked on this concept for months. Your input isn't needed. He blinks, surprised by my directness. Well, I only meant... I know exactly what you meant, I say, placing my hand on Rowan's shoulder as he enters with dessert plates. And this visit is now over. Sage will walk you to your car. They leave without protest, which would have seemed miraculous a year ago. Later, Phoebe raises her wineglass in our smaller, warmer gathering. Monica sits beside her, the attorney who became a friend after helping us secure our future. To the family we choose, Phoebe says, and the boundaries we protect. Rowan, who's been quieter since therapy began, looks up from his plate. Aunt Phoebe, did Grandpa always try to control everything even when you were kids? He did, she answers honestly. But control isn't love, sweetie. What your mom did took real courage. In my bedroom that evening, I hang our newest family portrait where I'll see it first thing each morning. The frame holds us all Sage, poised beside her dance trophies. Rowan with his science fair ribbon, Phoebe and Clara with their boys, Monica with her partner. My hands remain steady as I adjust it to perfect level. On my dresser sit tangible signs of our new path. College brochures for Sage, who graduates in 2 years. Rowan's therapy progress notes showing steady improvement. The museum's invitation to exhibit my textile art in a traveling collection. As I arrange our new family photos, I wonder whether true forgiveness means allowing toxic people back into your life or simply finding peace with their absence. Is maintaining relationship with difficult family members worth the cost? Or is sometimes the healthiest legacy we can create one that begins with us?